here at 330 Grand with our newest hitman, Alex the architect. Alex, welcome to your project that's now ready.
Thank you. Yeah. It's like pinch me. I think I'm dreaming, right?
Tell us the story. You said you came here once a week at minimum,
Yeah.
every week for 4 years straight.
Yeah. Well, the project started and stopped, and it wasn't under construction for continuously. But I always make it a point to do site visits once a week, and to get to know the guys that are actually building this, and sometimes cut through the paperwork of the back and forth through email and computer. Like sometimes you'll get an email with 20 bullet points, and you can just sketch something on the wall and clarify it, and everyone can keep moving. So I like to do that. But
So you're very hands-on.
Yeah, very much. You want things to go according to plan. You don't want to plan a project that you're sketch through it, right? But stuff happens in construction. You have to think on your feet, and it's sort of good to be here, and also to give a sense that to the team that there's someone directing this that can respond if necessary, if there's a question. So a lot of the guys text me in the morning. They're like, "What outlet? What height? And
Every day, probably phone blown up.
yeah, but a lot of times it's like, guys, I've already answered. Look at that. It's in an email somewhere, right? But for the most part, there's things that are just need to be fixed and sorted out on site that you might not anticipate, and so you always have to be here. And some architects are more hands off. They're like, I did the drawings and don't bother me. But I like to be here, and I like to help.
What's your full service? So let's say somebody either owns real estate and wants to redevelop it, right? Or they want to do a knockdown, ground up development.
Yeah.
Give me a full gamut of what your firm offers.
Well, we like to think of ourselves as full service. So we do ground up construction from zero. We've also done demolition in order to vacate a lot to do it. We've recycled buildings and rehab buildings. So if there's a portion of a building that can be reutilized, it's better for the environment. It's better for not always economics, but typically it is if you can recycle some part of an old building. We like to think of it as we never say no to jobs, and we'll take whatever sort of work, and that's been the way the business has grown, and that's exposed us to a lot of different types of things. So right now we're adding a floor to a building, a 6-story building. We're adding a floor. We're taking over projects from other architects where sometimes we're the second, third, or fourth architect because things are a mess. We obviously love starting them from the beginning and doing them from scratch, but a lot of developers don't want to invest in a zoning analysis from the beginning.
What's the cost behind typical zoning analysis?
Well, we have advanced software today, makes it faster, and we can do a pretty good analysis within a day. But normally for $5,000, $6,000, you can get a proper zoning analysis that can even be sent to the DOB and double checked.
Huge. In a day, in 24 hours.
I could tell the person in a day what they can do, and it probably takes us a week to produce the drawings.
Put together.
But there's a lot of value in knowing what you can build because a lot of people transact on the buildable square footage. So I consult with a lot of brokers. A lot of brokers will call me and say, "Hey, this is a tricky one. What can I do here?"
Right.
And because the more you do this, the more you learn the zoning, and it becomes inherent, and you don't have to necessarily look it up every time.
Now, do you have a problem where you walk by a building, you're like, "Damn, that architecture wasn't that good," or do you look at a building like, "Wow, that guy or girl is really good"? Do you have that where
yes,
everywhere in New York City you're seeing architecture, right?
Yes, it's a problem because if I want to relax and disconnect. I need to go to nature.
Gotcha.
I need to see
no buildings,
not things that aren't made by humans, right? When I'm seeing the built world by humans, I'm always wondering, why is that building so beautiful? How much did they spend? What was the budget? Or why is that one so horrible? Or what did they do? You're always thinking about it because you sometimes you're looking at the city and saying, oh, wait a second, they did that there. Maybe it's in the code somewhere that's allowed. I thought it wasn't, and you can use the city as a template.
Sure.
And say, oh no, that was illegal to begin with.
It's like case law if you're a lawyer.
Yeah, it's just walking around and seeing these things, So, and for the same reason, travel is so attractive to us. Like just going to other places of the world, seeing how people build. And in another life, I worked in retail, and I worked for Ralph Lauren, and I had the privilege of designing stores all over the world. And you would see how people built differently, even the same design concept. Someone would do it in plaster in Russia, and someone else would do it in wood in France, and they would look the same to the eye. They just had different building techniques with local ways of making things, and the more you experience that, the more you can be sensitive to knowing what is realistic in a certain situation and what you can't ask for. You know, like, you know that concrete in Japan is going to be perfect, and in New York City it's not so much.
You might get some.
Well, you know that like there's a certain inch or so of tolerance that you're going to deal with always in New York. It's just the nature of it.
New York City, that's what you get.
Yeah.
Plus or minus one, right?
Yeah.
Now, what are you seeing with all the new guidelines and regulations changing for multifamily buildings and larger buildings, elevators being added, and all that stuff? Walk us through that right now, because I feel like most landlords, you know, with the whole politics behind rent collection, the new, you know, rules regarding rent control and stabilization, and ability to raise rents and have to make capex improvements, landlords, owners are in a very big bind, right?
Yeah.
How do I add a $250,000 elevator if I can only raise my rent $200 a year, right? It doesn't make sense.
The performer doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So what are you saying right now?
Well, I mean, if you look at it from an architect's perspective, on the one hand, you have very stringent energy regulations that are in effect that are, on the one hand, you could argue are going to stimulate a new type of economy and new services. You know, there's a lot of people who are gearing towards providing services in that world. We do it already because, you know, this building has to meet the energy code, and so we already know how to do code calculations and energy models and all these things. So for us, it's nothing new. It's just now it's being forced on older buildings, right? And so there's a lot of questions and there's a lot of unknowns. We're part of the New York City Accelerator program. So we are sort of a list of specialists that can help people deal with this. What ends up usually happening is everyone's looking for the lowest fruit in the sense of, you know, they're not going to go necessarily change their windows and their insulation where they need an architect for help. They're looking at what light bulbs they can change first. Then it's
low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, and then, you know, what can I do to my gas boiler, and can I make it, you know, can I switch over to electric, or can I put PTAX in? So what's normally happening is a lot of vendors at the MEP equipment level are filling in that gap, because we haven't yet seen, unless you're Bright Power and you're doing the Empire State Building, you haven't seen people who are actually looking at an envelope retrofit. There's some cases, we're just not getting that work, but I can see it being cost prohibitive for a lot of people, and a really thorn in their side. A lot of people don't even understand yet what it is they have to do.
Got it.
So I think that as they understand what's needed, and as the city starts tightening more, you're going to see less knee-jerk reaction and maybe more long-term planning. And so if you can start, for example, saying, well, I'm going to get these violations and these fines, because it's a great revenue for the city.
Of course.
Just, you know, that's tax. But if you can say, okay, instead of me spending $2,500 or $3,000 in fines this year, or if it's worse, it can be hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines, let's invest that money into making the building more energy efficient. Then you can have a better conversation about, okay, what's the lowest hanging fruit on this building? What can I do?
Got it.
We change the windows, will it make an effect? So we, as architects, we can model a building and show you, if you change the windows, you spend all this money and it's going to do nothing, versus insulating the building, you know, spending this much money. And so you can have a cost-benefit analysis of the different parts and look at it holistically. That's really what you want to do, is you want to look at a building from a holistic perspective, right? If you're going to go ahead and do major repairs, don't think short term, because you can end up dishing out more money than to do it perhaps as a well-planned renovation. Now,
are you a believer of the office to residential conversion, or do you think that's just a momentum dream?
No. I think buildings are recycled and their uses change, and throughout history we've seen you know, pagan temples converted into Catholic churches, and it's always done. And why start from scratch if you can recycle something that works? The problem with the office buildings is that it's sort of the same problem with the energy in a building. Each case is different. Each building is its own little mini world, right? So the problem in residential, the current zoning, you have to have a certain amount of ventilation, light and air, and a certain room sizes, right? And on some buildings, it's very easy to convert them. You can literally quickly change them into apartments at an efficient cost. And hey, if there's no demand for offices and people need housing,
no brainer.
But there's others that were designed very specifically to the office code in a time period and on a lot where if you start modifying them to make them comply, you're going to spend a lot of money to do it, right? Because you may need to have additional light and air courts. The zoning's quite strict, and it's strict to protect us from, you know, the railroad apartments
Sure.
with the dumbbell light well
Sure.
that you cross the river in Jersey City, you still see today, right? Where you can get light and air from a 3-foot
Yep.
crevice.
Yep.
And New York decided a long time ago to change the rules so that you would have enough distance from other buildings and have windows that weren't just going into a shaft.
Yeah.
They were,
Sure.
right. So either they have to relax those laws, which would have effects.
Do you see that possibly happening?
It's
or
in
no?
discussion.
Yeah.
I've seen the problem. You know, the mayor's office is in a lot of trouble these days, and so
With
there's-
everything.
yeah, there was a lot of momentum talking about relaxing some of these laws. So other cities, Chicago, San Francisco, they're also talking about it. I mean, wasted space is a crime in a city like this, and it should
Of
be
course,
used.
especially when it trades at 2,000 a square foot.
Right. And there's been some interesting Times articles on you know, architects talking about what can be retrofitted easily and what can't. It's a case by case study,
Interesting.
you know, but I do think that you want people who are creative at coming up with solutions that people may have not thought about before.
So do you see a war going on between the new creatives versus the old regime? Is that where the tussle really is?
Yeah, I mean, architecture is weird because, you know, in the old days, like when I went to school, I drafted by hand. Then we started picking up the computer, right? Today we're
All digital.
We're all digital. We're programming in Python, doing things parametrically, right? But a lot of guys that are maybe 20 years older than me barely made that transition. They're in AutoCAD.
They're still hand.
No, or some of the guys that still hand sketch
Sure.
and they have draftsmen, right? And so what happens is I can sometimes spend 2 weeks programming a tool that will then bang out, you know, for example, seating for a theater, bang it out in 30 seconds, and I can change the seating 100 times and go through iterations and use AI
Sure.
to generate them quickly. And so I spent 2 weeks on developing a tool that now I have for the rest of my life that'll just generate something
Amazing.
where you're competing with someone who might be old school moving things around still. So it depends on how the office is structured, what tools they use. There is a generational shift, but also I'm getting older. So as I get older, people trust me more as a
More
more
wise.
experienced architect.
Yeah.
I'm getting the jobs that at 20 no one wanted to
Couldn't
give me.
compete with, yeah.
And you've got guys that are retiring and cashing out. You know,
Yeah.
the pandemic, a lot of people, you know, closed shop
Yeah,
and said,
sure,
I'm done.
sure.
So we're growing, we're getting more work, and I don't know if it's a success story because of word of mouth, if it's just a natural progression.
All the above, probably compound effect, right?
Maybe
Just
all
doing the
of
right
it.
thing for
Yeah.
20 plus years and
Yeah,
delivering. I think
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing. From what I find, like dealing with most professionals, let alone architects, most people don't provide a personalized relationship or service, right?
Yeah.
So like this, unheard of. Like I've never had an architect ask to come to any of our creative projects that we've done before.
yeah.
You know, so like just the willingness to be out there and meet more people and be open-minded. I feel like that might be what separates you in particular from maybe the people that don't necessarily need to do that or want to do that.
Yeah. Well, there's a few things. Like one, you know, I'm an immigrant, so I still have that immigrant mentality of saying yes to every project.
And shaking hands.
Yeah, and you know, if someone asks me to do a 200 square foot wardrobe, we do it with the same love and care than a 7-story building.
Got it.
We say yes, and we have projects of all scales
Understood.
and all types of clients. It's very rare that we say no to a project. We can say we're really busy, might take longer than
Sure.
right? But we typically say yes. And the thing is, I've said yes to some things that are really, really tough that have really, you know, kicked our behinds.
Sure.
And I've regretted it, and I've lost money on it, but I've gained an incredible amount of experience. So when the situation comes again, we're doing it with our eyes
You're ready ahead.
and so a lot of that is helpful. Like, you know, once you do a building that has everything going against it, you know, on the next client you can sort of advise. We even do owner's rep work where we can tell the client, look, I would stay away from this. I would not do this. Like, because there's architects that just say yes, yes, yes.
And then bill later.
No, and they draw, but it's like they're not in control of their design or the product because it's like they're just used to knowing the client's right because they're paying, And then there's people like us who will say, look, I understand you want this, but you're making a serious mistake, and let me explain to you why. Why don't you look at it this way?
Got it.
And I feel that it's a service that we have to provide. I tell people it's like you bought a horse or an elephant, right? And you need the veterinarian, right?
Have to.
So a lot of times, especially in New York with old buildings, I'm like, look, I'm here to be the doctor of this building. Sure, I can put a swimming pool on the roof.
Of course.
But if you put it somewhere else, it might save you a ton of money or may be more practical. There's clients that love that interaction, and others that don't listen. And so each one's different, and you have to adjust your relationship to each one.
I love it. Well, listen, man, you did a great job on this building. I can't wait to see what the final sales come out at, but this has got to be one for the record books for you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we have high ceilings, big windows. We have really good bones
Natural
here.
light.
Lots of natural light. We have incredible soundproof windows. They're like 38 decibels towards the street.
Can't hear anything.
No, it's dead quiet inside. And like down here we've got 12'6" ceilings, and above we've got 9
Put
foot.
a basketball hoop in there.
Yeah, it's tall.
Now, how can people get a hold of you? Instagram, email, cell phone? What's the best way to contact you?
Best way is website and email, and
We'll put that in like right here. Anthony will edit it all in.
And if you want to follow like what we're doing on a daily basis, Instagram is great because every time I go to a site visit, we'll snap a picture and you can see the progress of construction and all
see
that.
something come to life.
Yeah,
Awesome, man.
you see the process.
Well, I appreciate it. It's been a pleasure
Thank
getting
you.
to know you.
Thank you.
Congratulations on this. I
Likewise.
love watching it come to life.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sometimes I get a good feeling, yeah.